This is August 11th, 1983. This is Joe Todd, an interview with Mr. Harrell W. Cotner, C-O-T-N-E-R. Mr. Cotner, where were you born?
I was born in Colbert's Ferry, Indian Territory, November 29th, 1902.
Colbert's Ferry. Who was your father?
Solomon Thomas Cotner. Called him Saul.
Was he from Indian Territory?
He was Missourian.
Missouri. Who was your mother?
Francis Bell Cotner.
Was Bell her maiden name?
Yeah.
From Missouri?
No, Texas.
Texas. What kind of work did your father do?
My father was a machinist, blacksmith, machinist, iron worker.
When did he come to Indian Territory?
Well, he came to Indian Territory about 1894, I guess it was.
How come he came here?
Well, he'd been in Texas. He started a family in Texas, and he and a brother-in-law of his built a gin, one of the first cotton gins in Fannin County, Texas. And he sold out the gin, and he read about Indian Territory, people coming over here. He decided to come up there, and they moved to Colbert. Colbert.
Did he have to get permission to come into the territory?
Not that I know of. I don't think any of them did. They just came over.
Yeah. Did you know your grandparents?
Well, I didn't know them personally. All I do is know of them. My grandfather and grandmother on the paternal side was named Bell, William Bell, and William and Elizabeth Bell. He migrated to Texas in 1815 under a land grant from Stephen F. Austin. He had colonized, brought people into the northeast Texas and settled in a little town called Savoy, just east of Sherman, Texas. And he surveyed out this land grant and was given land for his troubles. There was, let's see, let's look at that. Well, you don't care about how many children he had or anything like that.
What about on your father's side? What about your grandparents?
My grandfather on my father's side was named George Washington Cotner.
Where is he from?
Well, he was originally from, I don't know where he was born, whether he was born in Virginia or Tennessee, but he joined the Tennessee Volunteers and went into the Mexican War. He was an Army doctor. And before the Mexican War, he was in the group of soldiers that escorted the Indians of the five civilized tribes to eastern Oklahoma, Trail of Tears, Payne County. And after the Mexican War, where he lost one eye, he went to Missouri and claimed his land as being a veteran. And his brother, Solomon Cotner, come in and settle there with his father and mother, David Cotner. They came from Carolina up there.
Did you ever hear any stories about either the Mexican War or the Trail of Tears from your grandfather, or any
Yeah,
stories?
I handed down through my father. He told about the Trail of Tears, how hard it was on the Indians. And he told one story about a squaw that was pregnant, and she was ready to give birth, but the procession wouldn't stop. So the squaw laid down under a tree and gave birth to this child and caught up with a bunch. He told about that and thought that was very hard-hearted.
Yeah.
The Mexican War, he told about going into Mexico with, I forget the general's name now, that expedition.
Scott.
Huh?
General Scott.
Scott, I think. About going into this little Mexican town, and a Mexican run out and grabbed his horse's bridle and began to pull it around, and they couldn't get him turned loose. And to my sorrow and everybody else's sorrow, my grandfather shot him. And there was quite a hubbub about that. But nothing else that came of it that I know of.
Mm-hmm. Do you have any photographs of your grandfather?
Yeah, I got, that's my grandfather Bell's.
And that's the one that was on the Trail of Tears.
Well, it's behind that picture. You want to take it down and look at it?
Yeah. I'd like to see it.
Right over there.
What was his name? Was this your grandfather Bell?
No, it was my grandmother's father.
Okay.
His name was Baggett.
Baggett.
He died in the Alamo.
You did? What was his name?
His name was, no, let's see, I can't think of his given name.
Mary Baggett Bell?
Mary Baggett Bell was my grandmother. She was the wife of Stephen Bell, that picture of the first picture.
Yeah.
And this was their offspring, William, Jack, Fredonia, Francis Bell. That's my mother. Betty Bell, Rebecca Bell, and Mary Bell. And that's her picture.
Yeah.
And this, of course, is his grandfather Bell.
Mm-hmm.
He lost a life too, but it wasn't that way.
Now, you say one of your grandfathers died in the Alamo?
Yeah, my grandfather, our maternal grandfather, died in the Alamo. I believe his name was William Baggett. William, I believe it was. His name is inscribed in the Alamo down there.
Did you hear any stories about him?
The only thing that I knew about him, even his daughter, my grandmother, didn't know a heck of a lot. When she and her brother were just children, Baggett left. They lived in East Texas. He left to go on west to look for land. And he got down in that area, in San Antonio area, and was caught up in the Alamo when the Mexican leader brought his forces in. Mm-hmm. And they decided they'd rather die than surrender to them. They were all killed in there except one. I think one escaped or got out of there to carry a message. But that's all we know about him. My grandmother didn't know anything about him. She was too young when he left. And her mother died shortly afterwards, after he left, and they were taken to be raised by an aunt or someone, I don't know. Mm-hmm. But that's all that I knew about it.
Do you know what kind of man your grandfather was like? Grandfather Cotner? Yeah.
He was very aggressive, and I guess it's from his military experience, I don't know. There's a story about he and his brother Solomon that I don't like to repeat. Well, I said I don't like it, there's nothing special about it. When the Civil War came on, they were sided with the South. They were in Missouri side. And they bought a lot of slaves, thinking that the South was going to win. And when the war was over and the slaves were all freed, boy, they lost their pants. They didn't lose everything. They had land in Missouri. It's quite a story about those Cotners up there in Missouri. I have a copy of it listing them. My father was married twice. He married in Missouri, and he was the only child. And he moved to Texas with his wife and 2 children. There was a boy, 3 children, boy and 2 girls. And his wife died shortly after they reached Texas. And he met my mother, Frances Bell Staley. She'd been married before, and her husband committed suicide. He was an alcoholic. So they met and married, and she had 1 child by this fellow Staley, and he had these 2 children by this McPherson lady. And his father owned quite a bit of land in Missouri. Mm-hmm. And married again, and I don't even know what his second wife's name was. But no children by it. But he was a very, I could say, hot-tempered.
Yeah.
And it's inherited. But I don't know much about him. My father did talk very little about his family, and most of the information I got from him was through what he had told my mother. Mm-hmm. But this Bell, during the Civil War, they lived in northeast Texas, and there was trouble by the Indians raiding across Oklahoma, coming off the Indian territory down in there, raiding that country. They organized a group to fight off those Indians, and that's where he served during the Civil War. Keeping the Indians back from them. I had my mother tell stories about, now they had slaves too. Mm-hmm. Telling about, my mother was born in '59, and she was just a young kid, 5 or 6 years old there during the Civil War started, you see. And she told about the time that you'd get stories about the Indians coming across in that area, and her mother gathering up the kids and all of the slaves and bringing them into the big house and locking the doors and windows while this Indian raid was going on, you know. And she told stories about how they spent the winter evenings pulling seed out of cotton, before they had cotton gins.
Yeah.
And she told stories about her father going down to what's that town in Texas where the boats came up? Jefferson, Texas, to buy supplies. Be gone maybe a month at a time. And she remembered about their first Irish potatoes. Brought them up there, and they seed from there, and they planted Irish potatoes, and they were all he'd buy knickknacks and things that was come in from France and places for the kids. Oh, I don't know. I just remember this thing, and that she'd tell about those stories.
Mm-hmm. You've been to the Alamo then, haven't you?
Oh, yeah. unexpectedly.
Did he want to be in the Alamo?
No, I guess he didn't. He wasn't in the choice. He was down there land hunting, and I guess was forced to take refuge in the Alamo. That's the way I understand it. I have very little information about it. I always wished I did, but nobody. The fact that his wife died while he was gone, and my grandmother and her brother grew up, not knowing very much about it. It's been hard to find out.
Yeah.
There's been several baggages. There's one in Wichita Falls. There's in the automobile business down there. They're a Chrysler dealer. But I have never talked with him. I have never conferred with anyone by the name of Baggett.
Yeah. Okay. Do you have any memories of Colbert's Ferry?
No, I left there. They moved away from there when I was just a little over a year old. I have been back there, visited there, but I don't have very many recollections of. Well, I couldn't remember it all. We moved to Wilburton, Oklahoma. Father went up there. Some mining outfit had him come up there because of his iron working ability, and we stayed there at Wilburton a little over a year, about 32 years.
Do you remember Wilburton? Do you have any?
Just have a vague recollection of an incident that happened there. The family had a dog, a bulldog, and it had a picket fence around the house, and kids would come along there and tease that bulldog. And the bulldog broke his rope and jumped that fence and got a kid. And caused quite a few. That's all I can remember that. And we moved to Waurika in 1905, just before I was 3 years old. And that was old Oklahoma, you see. He first Meridian divided the Indian Territory in old Oklahoma. He went there and went into business, put in a machine shop.
How come he moved to Orica?
To go into business in old people. He's tired of living in Indian Territory. And we moved over there and got into business. I say tired of living in Indian Territory. I don't know whether that did or not. That's been my recollection of it. But there was an opportunity there. There's a new town, and the Rock Island Railroad had just built through there. And they were locating their shops there, you see. And he moved there. I remember moving there. And we moved, had everything loaded on the boxcar and the cows and everything else. And the father and boys, 2 brothers riding with him in that boxcar. And mother and sisters and stuff on the train.
What are your first memories of Waurika?
My first memory was when we first got there. We went to a boarding house there, and the family did, and stayed while my father built a house. And it wasn't long after that. Well, we had moved into our house. I guess that was 1908 when the big flood came there. I remember we moved out of our house 3 times that year. That creek flooded the town, you know. And I remember riding down Main Street there. My brothers and some others had a rowboat, and they took me and rode down Main Street of Waurika in a rowboat.
That was in 1908?
1908, yeah.
Who ran the boarding house? Do you remember?
Well, it was the old, let's see what the name of it. An American hotel. two hotels we stayed at during those floods. One was American and this was, I can't remember what the name of it was. There's an old frame hotel, been torn down for years.
Oh, that's fine. What kind of house did your father build in Waurika?
Well, he built a frame house. Let's see, there was 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 rooms in it. And it was an average
One story?
one-story house that people built those during those days. It's a frame house.
When did you start school?
I started school in, well, let's see, I guess it was the fall of 1908. Yeah, and the first school I went to was a wooden schoolhouse down on the banks of Beaver Creek. The whole school was in one room, every grade.
What was the name of the school?
Oh Lord, I don't know whether they had one or not. They were building the first school there in Waurika, urban school, at the time. It was under construction. That was the only year I went on that riverbank school. The next year they had that urban school finished. I went to school up there.
What was your teacher's name?
Her name, my first teacher was, oh gosh, you hadn't asked me. She had a sister lived there, and she and her husband her husband was a lawyer, and they had one son, Dillard. Their name was Dillard. And her name was, she was from Kentucky, I remember very well. She came from Kentucky. Oh gosh. I know it just as well. And it'll come to me in a minute.
Her last name is Dillard?
No, that was her sister's
That was
married
her
name.
sister.
Oh yeah, now her name, I remember now from this show, TV show, Mary Tyler Moore. Her name was Moore, Mary Moore. Yeah.
What was the one-room schoolhouse like? How did she conduct classes with all the different grades?
Well, there wasn't too many in the whole darn school. I don't suppose it was over 25 or 30. Well, they just had the seats. They were all double seats and desks. Everybody sat with someone else. And she had it divided out there. The oldest ones in this one section and on down the steps till you got down to the grade that I was in, the first grade. She'd conduct maybe a class in reading in the first grade and then go on up to the next 2 or 3 grades, whatever she's teaching, and on clear on up through the highest grade they's teaching there. And I don't imagine that's past the 8th grade. I don't know. I know my sister, older than I, and brothers went there. I had one, I couldn't put this in your record. I remember very well. I had a case of diarrhea while I was in that first grade, and I couldn't make it out the door. The teacher didn't let me loose fast enough.
Do you remember Statehood Day?
Yeah.
What was that day like?
Well, it was wild and woolly there at Waurika. See, Waurika was in old Oklahoma territory, and we had open saloons. And 81st, 98th Meridian separated the Oklahoma and Indian territory. And cowpunchers and ranchers and things from Indian Territory would come over there to refresh themselves, you know, at these saloons. And it get pretty wild there at times. But the night of the election, when they had this, when they become a state, I mean, it was wild. The saloons was having to close up at midnight, you know, and everybody that had a gun was firing it off in there. And of course, at that time, Waurika and Ryan were very much opponents in which would be the county seat. And Waurika became the county seat. There was quite a bit of rivalry there. It always is, between Ryan and Waurika in school affairs and political affairs and everything else. But that night, I remember very well being up on Main Street with my father and mother and sisters. And I mean, there was plenty of yelling and drunks and everything else there on statehood day. It was September 1907 or August?
November 19.
November 1907.
What was 4th of July like at those days?
Well, we always used to have a 4th of July picnic and barbecue. And there's usually a baseball game between the Fats and the Leans, and some other.
The Fats and
not
the Leans.
much. Fats and the Leans. And
That was this fat guys and
fat guys against the skinny guys. I know we had one great big old fat guy, he was a butcher there. He played baseball there. And he couldn't take him an hour to run around 4 bases. But anyhow, they had a horse-drawn merry-go-round, and they had some different carnival games, you know, and generally had a big barbecue. Everybody just had a big time, hot as hell, with sweat and cheese and fliggers and jiggers and everything else each other. But we always had a 4th of July picnic.
What about Christmas?
Oh, we used to have church Christmases. Church always had a Christmas tree, and kids all went there, you know, they get their bag of candy or fruit and their presents that the parents would put on the trees for them. It was quite a deal. I remember one Christmas that I got a package of firecrackers. I guess it's a nickel package then, probably $1 now, but that was really a gift for me. And one Christmas I got one of these hand-propelled go-karts. I don't know what did they call those things. Irish flyer. Yeah. And all Christmas was always a big time. We had it around big meals, and everybody had a big time.
What kind of tree was a Christmas tree?
Well, it was usually I guess it's a pine or fir or cedar, I don't know which. Always great big trees over there up the ceiling of the church.
Yeah, you make your own decorations?
I guess they did. They had popcorn and colored stringers around over the tree.
What were the winters like around Waurika?
They used to be worse than they are now. I remember, or at least they seemed that way to me. I remember very well. I was given a pair of ice skates. Now, can you imagine giving a kid ice skates in southern Oklahoma? But I had those ice skates, and every kid in town had a pair. And there was a lake pond between the depot and the old ice plant there. And we skated and played ice hockey. And I know one winter, there was so much ice and snow on the ground that I skated to school on my skates, ice skates, which was about half a mile from where I lived. But I've never seen winters like that since. I guess there has been. I just didn't seem like they were worse. But they were some pretty rough winters.
Can you describe downtown Waurika?
Then or now?
During that period.
Yeah. There was about 2 blocks, maybe 3 of business. They were nearly all wooden structures. Of course, the gaps weren't completely filled up. There was vacant lots in between. I remember on the main sections of the business, there was a hotel, the old Stewart Hotel. It was built after we went there. And on one corner, on the northwest corner of Broadway and I guess that was A Avenue. It went east and west. And then the Orica National Bank was on the other corner. And this old saloon belonged to the Stewards, was on the southeast corner. And the southwest corner at that time was vacant. And on down through there they had there was a meat market and a cafe and a furniture and undertaking store in that first block. There was an old hotel up on the north end of the next block north of that called a commercial hotel. It was built in this railroad went across that way and it made a kind of a V shape. They built that hotel according to that shape of that lot. The city hall used to sit right in the middle of Main Street. Right on the north end of Main Street, yeah. And well, the Rock Island Railroad built their new depot there. That is considered. You know, in those days they settled a lot of arguments with guns. And there was 2 families that lived there out east of Waurika in the old Indian Territory called what do we call it? Think of the name. What in the world is it? I almost say it. They were feuding, and then several shooting accidents there between these 2 families. And I know they had one deal there, the trial of one of them that shot one of the others. And those families come into town in covered wagons and everything, camped during that trial, you know. I can't think of them, call those names. Huh. Then there was another group, the Tuckers. They were part Indians. And they were always cutting up. I remember very well. I was sitting in the barber shop sitting up on a stool on the barber's chair, just a kid. I don't guess I was 6, 7 years old. And this barber shop was just behind what was in the Orica National Bank. And I was in this chair, and there was a guy in the next chair getting a shave. He had this everything all covered up except his face had that lather all on it. And one of these gang, I don't remember now whether it was one of the Tuckers or the others, walked in there and pulled a gun on him while he was there in that chair. And let him have it. Scared the fart out of me. I said, I hope that's not on your tape. But there were several gunfights there. I remember several of them. I was working in a drugstore there when I was in school, and there was a guy sitting out on the bench in front of that drugstore. And the guy walked up and shot him.
How come?
Oh, it was one of those family feuds. I don't know just what it was. And then I remember another deal. We had quite a large Negro town, populated town down there, and there was a boss of that Negro town named Brooks Andrews. He was a great, big, husky Negro, fine-looking fellow. And I was working in a drugstore. He was in the old Stewart Hotel then, behind the fountain. And it was one Saturday afternoon. This Brooks Andrews had been over to, had bought some seed corn. He had to put both arms walking down the street. And he got past, there was a guy, nigger standing there on the corner. Andrews got past him a little bit just in front of this drugstore. And this nigger here pulled out a gun and started shooting at him. Well, the first shot missed him and hit the glass just over my head behind this fountain. Well, there's several sitting there, guys there at the fountain, and we all began to scramble. He's trying to get behind that fountain, you know, and get out down on the floor. And he went on down another step to the pool hall. Next door was a pool hall in that hotel building. And he shot at him again, missed him, and went into this transom of this pool hall. Well, Brooks dropped his corn, turned around, run back, grabbed this Negro, took the gun away from him, and had him down, and just his hand on the trigger when the sheriff got a hold of him, didn't let him shoot him. Man, that was exciting.
How old were you then?
Oh, I was in high school. I was working in that drugstore.
Mm-hmm.
But there were several incidents like that happened around there. I remember very well.
When did you get out of high school? What year?
20.
1920. Was there much work for the war effort in Waurika in World War One?
Oh, you bet. They had bond rallies and Red Cross rallies and there was a lot of effort. I know one thing that I tried to register for the draft. I wasn't old enough, but I lied to them when I went up to the registering about my age. Well, the guy at the registrar there, one of the head ones, knew my family. My father was dead then. And he called my mother and wanted to know how old I was. And she told him, said, he's down here registering for the draft. And he's not old enough. So she riled up one of my brothers and they went after me, got me up, wouldn't let me register. But everybody was very much pitched up then. There was 2 or 3 German families lived around there, and there was a lot of animosity towards it. They were nice people too. They wasn't.
Mm-hmm. What did the town do to the German people?
They painted yellow stripes around their barns and harassed them. That's about all. Yeah,
How many boys from around Orica went to the war?
Oh gosh, I don't know. Both of my brothers went. Neither one of them got into active duty. My brother next to me, Paul, he was in camp out in Arizona. No, it was in New Mexico. What was the camp? Well, anyhow, he was out there when they mustered them out to go, and they gave him their final physical, and they turned him down on account of his heart. He died of heart failure later on. Mm-hmm. And the other brother, Hugh, went to camp down below Fort Worth, somewhere down in there, and
they're at Camp Bowie?
May have been.
That's about near Fort Worth.
Yeah.
the war was over before they got him out of that camp.
What about the Mexican incident, Pancho Villa, 1916?
Well, I remember that very well. They moved a lot of soldiers out of Fort Sill down that way. They come through Waurika. They had to change their engines there, you know. And they gave them, I guess they were there for 30 minutes or an hour. And they met them there at the depot and gave them a lot of pep talk and all that stuff. Yeah, I remember that bunch going to the Mexican uprising down there.
Did all the boys that went to the war come back from Orica?
No, there were several killed, and one very good friend of our family was wounded, shrapnel wounds, and he lost one leg and had a Lawrence Morgan. He was later elected county court clerk or county clerk down there. And no, there was several casualties from Orica. I don't remember who they were, but I remember some of them's funerals.
Okay. Where'd you meet your wife?
In Texas, rural Texas.
What were you doing down there?
I was with the what's now the Public Service Company of Oklahoma. I was an accountant, and they sent me down to Quanah, Texas. They owned the properties at Quanah and Chillicothe, Texas. They sent me down to Quanah with one of the vice presidents of the company who was on a bond sale deal. And I had a half sister lived in Crow. And when I got to Quanah, I let her know I was there, and one of her sons called me and said they was having a dance down in Crow and wanted to know if I'd like to go. So he'd come up and get me a date. And I said, yeah. So we went to that dance. But I didn't have a date with my wife. It was with another girl. And while I was at the dance, there was a bunch of boys down there from Paducah, Texas. And they started to fight, and I got right in the middle of it. And my wife's cousin was the mayor. And they had us all over there and fined us $40 a piece for that fight.
What started it?
Oh, some dispute over one of the girls. I don't know which it was. I danced with my wife several times, and what did they call it? I don't know what it was. One of my nephews, I think, was really the one that they was aiming at. But anyhow, that's where I met my wife. Her name was Thompson, Bess Thompson, and we had a date or two while I was there in Quanah, and I came back to Oklahoma City and corresponded with her. We got engaged. Well, I met her in Wichita Falls and had a date with her there too. We were married on the 24th of December, 1925.
1925.
I got out my Christmas and anniversary day all at the same time.
Let me back up. Who founded the town of Orica?
Huh?
Who founded Waurika?
Oh, I guess the Rock Island Railroad. I don't know. They came through there and staked out their. See, they were building that Enid and Anadarko branch, and the main line too come in the head right there at Waurika, and going to put their roundhouse there. And I suppose that it was founded by the Rock Island Railroad. I never did know of anything different. Of course, there was a lot of promoters moved in there right after that.
What does Waurika mean?
Now, you may not want to put this in your tape. It's an Indian name. But Beaver Creek and Cow Creek come together right in the northwest edge of Waurika. And Beaver, then it became one Beaver Creek. and there was a crossing there that they forded the creek, a low water crossing, just to the west of the town. They're right in town, you might say. And the tale was told that an Indian buck and his squaw were coming along there on horseback, and the squaw was pulling a travois. And he had her to go into the creek first to see if it was high. It was up a little bit, and they thought maybe it might be too high to cross. So he had his squaw to cross there first. And she got out in the middle of the stream, and the water came up over the horse's back, and she hollered out, "Waurika, Waurika, ass wet." Bottom wet, put it down.
Mm-hmm.
But that's a story that I've heard all my life. But I don't know, there's been several stories on it, but that was more logical.
Who knows? Did you ever know any of the guys that rode the Chisholm Trail around Waurika?
No, not personally. My wife's father, he didn't ride the Chisholm Trail, but he rode the trail right up through here, up through Granite and on that way to Kansas.
What was his name?
Thompson.
Thompson?
Yeah.
Did he ever tell any stories about the trail?
Oh yeah, he told stories about it. I don't think he made but 2 trips. He told about camping up here around Granite, where there was a spring of water, good nice cool water. And, crossing Red River, down here at Dome's Crossing.
Mm-hmm. What was this a cattle trail?
Yeah, right. It came, well, I guess it almost came through what's now Altus. Altus wasn't here then, but they went right on up through Blair, the area, and
What's the name of the trail?
I don't know.
Yeah.
They never did. If it had a name, I didn't know.
Did he ever talk about how they drove the cattle? Exactly how they...
Oh, not much. He told about the worst job of the deal was riding to the rear of the herd, because it just, you couldn't hardly breathe from the dirt and stuff, you know. And he told about camping out and eating at the chuck wagon. I don't know a lot of stories about it. Nothing of any significance. Just a hard time deal. He was quite a character.
Mm-hmm. What was he like?
Well, he was part Indian. I don't know, just his mother was Porter. I guess that'd make him a hateful.
Mm-hmm.
He was a very honest, hard-working civil engineer. He was a civil engineer. And, but, man, he could sure get mad. I'll never will forget one time my wife and I was down there visiting, and his wife sent us to town to get a loaf of bread. And we stopped right in the middle of the street in front of the bakery. And an old boy come up wanting some directions. And he said, "Hey, Dad, can you tell me where I can find so-and-so?" You know, and anything made the old man mad. Someone called him Dad. It wasn't his son or daughter. And boy, he exploded. And he said, "I'm not your dad."
You say that you moved to Oklahoma City.
Yeah.
What year?
Well, I was in Waurika. I was chief bookkeeper for the old North American Light and Power Company. It had been purchased by the Southwestern Light and Power Company. And in 1925, and the vice president and the chief engineer of the Southwestern Light and Power Company came down there checking over the property, and I met this chief engineer. His name was Reagan, and they were, of course, going to see. We kept general books there at Waurika for the North American Light and Power Company, so they were going to close that part of it down, the county part of it, factory. And he wanted to know if I'd like to move up to Oklahoma City to go into the general office. I didn't have much choice, so I did. And before I was married.
How did the North American Power and Light produce electricity?
We had steam boilers and steam engines. We had one 125 kW engine and one 75 kW.
Where are they located?
Generated. At the old, that's where it is now. I guess it's still there, the ice plant, generating plant, just east of the old depot, where the depot is. Water towers over there, and they had some wells where they got water and stuff there.
So you and your wife, after you married, went to Oklahoma City?
Yeah, I came down to Oklahoma City and came to Wichita Falls. My brother and I went over the road and got married, and we went back to Oklahoma City.
What part of town you live in?
In Oklahoma City?
Yeah.
Well, our first house was an apartment out on North 26th Street, right off of Classen. And then later on, my sister and her husband had some property over on Northeast 28th Street in Kelly. And there was a fellow started development out there, just north of the Capitol. And he built some garage apartments. And we moved out there. And lived for when I got transferred to Hollis as their district manager at Hollis. But
How long were you in Oklahoma City?
well, we wasn't there long. About 6 or 7 months we lived there before they moved me to Hollis. I moved to Hollis in July of 26.
26. What was Hollis like?
Well, it was hot and dusty when we got there on the first day of July. There wasn't any pavement. And
What's the main industry around Hollis?
then,
Yeah.
cotton,
Cotton.
gins, and farming was her whole main thing.
Did you know any of the Sugg family around Waurika?
Suggs, not personally. There was one rancher lived out there, joined the Suggs ranch, had 2 daughters. What in the heck was his name? One of these girls went up to work for the state. She was secretary to the Secretary of State up there for years. What was her name? That's my trouble. I can't remember names anymore. Dayton. Well, anyhow.
Oh, that's okay. So how long you stay in Hollis?
I was there 6 years. We were there 6 years.
Yeah.
I moved there in 26. And they moved me to Altus in 1932 as area manager.
Okay, now, what were your responsibilities in Hollis? What'd
Well, I
you
was
do?
the manager of the property. We had the ice plant and an electric distribution system, and worked the towns of Gould and Duke out of there.
How far from Martha is Hollis?
About 35 miles.
35 miles. So that's about as far southwest you can go, isn't it?
Just the last town. 4 miles to Texas border.
And then you were there till 1932.
Left there, moved to Altus in August of 32.
How come they transferred you to Altus?
Well, the manager they had here was, I don't know just what happened to him, but anyhow, the president of the company, Earl Ernsberg, I don't know whether you've heard of him or not. he called me up and asked me if I'd like to move to Altus. And I said, well, it all depends. This manager they had here then was a good friend of mine. And he said, well, it's a proposition that's going to be open, and regardless of how you feel, so if you want it, you can have it. So I said, well, so I put it that way, I'll take it. So they moved me to Altus.
How did the Depression affect you and your family?
Well, really not much. Of course, everybody took a wage cut, but I was drawing a pretty good salary for that time.
What was your salary?
At that time, it was $200 a month. Dang good money. And I got cut 10%. And when we moved to Altus, of course the Depression was on. And I rented a 5-room modern house with a storm cellar and servants' quarters and a garage for $15 a month. And we lived in that house, about 4 years. They tried to sell it to me. The Woodward Building Loan Association that had to take it over, and they tried to sell that house for the loan, $1,800. And I said, well, the loan payments on it was 21 something. I said, what's the use of me paying $21 a month and I'm getting it for 15? So I didn't. I kicked my butt $1,000 an hour. But the things were pretty cheap. I know very well, Louis, our grocery bill, we had a little store down the street from us, 4 or 5 blocks, done most of our trading. And if my grocery bill went over $25 a month, I just raised it up. And that was meat, groceries, and everything. I remember, of course, everything else was tied on. In the company, we couldn't spend money. We made do with nearly everything that we could. But as far as we were personally concerned, we didn't suffer. We've been very fortunate all of our married life having sustenance.
How was what were the dust storms like in this part of the country?
Gosh, back there in those dust storms, I've seen it so dadgum dark you couldn't hardly see the dust flying. And one of them be over, there'd be dust in on the sidewalk, maybe a quarter of an inch deep, you know.
How long would they last, dust storms?
Well, some of them would last 12, 14 hours. A lot of it didn't last as long, but one of the big ones were where the dust was coming in from way up in Colorado and Kansas and in there, they'd last, 24 hours.
Who settled Altus?
Who settled Altus?
Yeah, who built it?
Well, if you know the story of Altus, it was first 2 miles west of where the town is. It's what's called Old Fraser, named after a man named Fraser. And it was in, well, I don't remember what the year it was. You can find that out now. It was a heck of a big rainstorm came. And this Bitter Creek run right down through. Fraser was located out on the banks of it. And it just enveloped the whole little old town of Fraser. So they decided to move the town up to higher ground. And that's what Altus means.
Higher ground.
Higher ground. And they moved it to the present location. McMahon's and I forget now the Lord where it was. There's more history to that than I can tell you. But the McMahon family was one of the main ones. And bankers there now.
Where did they build the Air Force Base? What did that
Well,
go
it's built in 40. They started building it right after Pearl Harbor in 42. The first episode of the Altus Air Force Base. And they trained soldiers there in these twin-engine planes. Then it was closed down after the war, and the site out there was deeded to, or was given to the town. They they brought in a lot of old planes there and salvaged them, you know, melted down the aluminum and all that stuff. Till when the Korean War broke out, why, they reactivated it. I guess, when was that, 50?
50 and 51.
Somewhere like that. But that's when the present base started.
What about war effort in Altus in World War II?
Well, that's pretty intense. All kinds of bomb drives and Red Cross drives. I know we worked very hard. I was on 2 or 3 of those teams. I remember the Rotary Club, the Chamber of Commerce, and several organizations right down there, Red Cross. But they had several. We were working at it all the time on different drives. The biggest one was putting in what do they call those places where they entertain, keep the soldier recreation.
USO?
USO. We worked hard to get that installed.
Who was in charge of the USO in Altus?
Then,
Yeah.
I don't remember who was in charge. I know several of them had worked around it.
What were their main functions, or what did they do for the soldiers?
Oh, they kept eats, drinks and eats, and they had dances and introduced in general. They furnished them writing material and helped them with their correspondence, and anything come up. They had different categories of duties. I can't just pinpoint the actual. It's like USO run, I guess.
What was the day like when World War II ended? What kind of celebrations they have in Altus?
World War II
Yeah.
ended. Well, I can't recall all of it. There was several of those dances and things of people just letting out their emotions, you know, after being confined so strict for so good while. I can't recall any particular event that they had other than just general celebrations.
Is there a big victory parade?
Well, I can't recall that. No.
What about Armistice Day, World War I?
Oh gosh. I was in Waurika then when it started.
What was that day like?
Oh man, they went crazy. I know they had.
Okay, say in front of the picture show?
Yeah, they was having a dance there at the big show celebrating it. And man, they were out there with their pistols and everything else, shooting them up in the air, and they cut one of the power lines too. But there was a group of kids at high school kids and all that. One of them, his dad bought a new Buick touring car. We got into that thing and roamed around, went up as far as Duncan, Ravensdale and Kane and all over the Armistice. I don't know, it was a while, wow.
Mm-hmm. Oh, let me regress. Do you know what tribe of Indians your grandfather helped escort to Indian territory?
Cherokees, Choctaws,
Well, he was with all of them then.
I guess that's what you call the Trail of Tears.
Yeah. So he just didn't escort one tribe, he went with all of them.
As far as I know, that is it. I never did.
So he probably made several trips then.
Well, I don't know about that, how many trips he made. I just know that it was in that, called it Trail of Tears.
Do you have any artifacts or items that belong to him?
My nephew is down in Altus, Jackson County Abstract Company. He got stuff that my brother had, his scalpel and some of the instruments he had when he was an Army doctor. That's all that we had about that.
That's Jackson County Abstract?
Yeah, Howard Cotner.
When did you move to Martha?
When I retired in 1966, we moved here in '68, February '68.
How come you moved to Martha?
Well, I bet I've asked that question 1,000 times. We lived been in Tulsa, the general office of the Public Service Company there 10 years. And getting close to retirement. We had searched all over northwest Arkansas and southwest Missouri and southeast Kansas and northeast Oklahoma, looking for a place to retire. We looked at lakes, we looked at rivers, we looked at everything, just looking. And we didn't realize at the time, but we were just being drawn back to this area somewhere or another. So we hadn't found anything that suited us. We decided that we'd come back down here and look around. And we went to Altus, looked at several houses around there, and run into a realtor that had this property out here. Come out and looked at it, and we liked it, bought it. 2 or 3 reasons we did. One is that it served the Public Service Company. And being a retiree, I had a 50% discount on the power.
Mm-hmm.
And it's only 9 miles to Altus.
Sure.
So,
How old was Martha?
well, I think it was 1880 is when it was established, or first settlement.
Who settled it?
Huh?
Who settled it?
Well, there were several families. That's what I was looking for in here. I wanted to get you the names of those. Try to find it. First settled by the Clinton Maddox family in 1885. Reason for settling here was a desire of a lot of people in the eastern section of the country to find new land. The Maddox family was quickly followed by the W.T. Cotney, C-O-T-N-E-Y family, in 1887. That same year, a Baptist minister, Reverend T.F. Medlin, encamped on Battle Creek and organized the first religious group In 1888, Miss Martha Medlin, a daughter of the first settlers, organized the first school in a dugout with an enrollment of 12 pupils. This was a subscription school, and each family paid so much for each child. In 1889, the first schoolhouse was built, partly of logs and sod. The seat and benches were made from hand-hewn logs or rough lumber. They used as school material newspapers, magazines, and catalogs, along with a few books that could be obtained. Mr. I.B.G., one of the early settlers, plowed a path to the schoolhouse so the children could find their way through the lush sage grass, sometimes shoulder high, and also so they could avoid the rattlesnakes that were very numerous at that time. One of the first school teachers was A.S.J. Shaw, who later became state auditor. The first death recorded in the community was an infant son of Lewis Medlin. He was buried in a cemetery located west of the present town of Martha. This cemetery was later moved to its present location due to the great flood of June the 4th, 1891. Now that's when Altus was formed. This was a flood that moved the town of Fraser from the location 3 miles west of the town of Altus, the present site. The name of Martha was selected for the town in honor of its first school teacher, Miss Martha Medlin. In 1889, Miss Martha Medlin was named the first postmistress. Mail was brought by stagecoach from Vernon. The community was very religious and had ministers of the Baptist Church, T.F. Medlin, Methodist Church, J.T. Hosmer, and Presbyterian Reverend McAnally. The name of the early day settlers were pretty well remembered, as many of their offsprings have made names for themselves all over the country, such as Dowdy, Maddox, Hosmer, Medlin, McAnally, Hughes, Cheney, Hewlings, Cotneys, Needs, DeBerrys, G's, Wommacks, Evans, Barretts, and many others. The Barrett twins lives out here now with a big landowner. In 1889, the first store was built by H.C. Dowdy, Clint Maddox, and T.F. Medlin. Mr. Maddox was also a blacksmith. In 1890, a cotton gin and grist mill was put in by Parson Hughes. Before the installation of the gin and mill, it was necessary to haul their cotton and corn to Vernon, where Wichita Falls did the process. In 1910, the railroad came through and the town had a nice growth. There were good and bad years, of course, such as flood and drought, but the community prospered. In 1926 and 27, 2 of the finest church edifices were constructed by the Methodist and the Baptist congregations, and it was not uncommon for Sunday attendance of 500 or more at each of these churches. That's a fact. Every 80 acres around here had family on it. This is one of the richest farmland part of the state. And there was a lot of people there. This church over here, we were members of it for 10, 12 years. At one time, we had as many as 500 in attendance. Balconies and all was full of the time. Big classroom. Now, we got down, this church closed 2 years ago. We got down where we'd have 9 in attendance. That was the thing about it.
Mm-hmm.
You want those names?
Do you have copies of these?
Well, let's see what that is.
This is the Tale of Two Cities.
Oh, that's Duke, huh? Well,
Yes, there it is up there.
yeah. Well, that's Duke. You wanted a copy of it?
Yeah, like it too.
Well, just take it. I don't have a, let's see if I have this on Martha. Kid that inquired about why we had the name of the town. Here it is.
The mayor of Martha.
Yeah.
Now, are you the mayor of Martha?
Yeah. So here he said, "Dear Mr. Mayor, my English class is doing a project on writing towns and cities that have the same names as a student. There was a town which my name was, so I selected yours because it's one of our faculty's names. If you would, sir, my English teacher wants us to ask answers back with it on a letterhead stationery, and if you please sign it with me, please send me a letter showing your favorite style of writing and how your town marker got its name. Jeff Steele." That is from Charlotte, North Carolina. And I wrote him a letter giving him about the same stuff as in
Yeah.
there. And, yeah, did I give you that copy of that?
No, it's, yeah, there it is.
Yeah.
The old gin next door that Tom was gonna use for a shop,
Yeah.
the organs in.
Yeah.
When is that gin built?
Oh, Lord, I know. One of the first ones. There was one here and one over there and the present one over here.
There's
Is
still
there-
a gin here then?
Huh?
There's still one gin that.
Oh, yeah, big gin. Yeah, co-op gin. It's about our main industry in the seed house over here. I don't know when this gin was built, but it's been there for years. I guess this is one of the first ones built here.
Let's see. Well, trying to think what else. What else you want to talk about?
Hmm?
What else you want to talk about?
I think I've done enough.
Oh, what kind of chores you do in the farm as a child?
I never did live on a farm.
You didn't.
Mm-mm.
How about around the house as a child? What'd you do?
Well, the ones that I remember most was getting in coal and wood, and chopping kindling, and building fires in the old coal stoves. And after I got a little older and got a little more negligent, didn't mind as well, I come in at night late and I wouldn't have my coal and wood in, and next morning when time to build a fire, I'd get up and run out in my gown and tail to get it up. Yeah, I remember that very well. And I just garden, helped my mother with the garden and chickens. I had a pet quail run. I raised quail.
Mm-hmm.
And had a couple of pet Lobo wolves at one time.
Pet wolves.
Yeah, that thing made me think of one of those feuding families named Tinny. Cal Tinny.
Kenny. That's in Waurika?
Tinny, yeah. Tinny and I think of the other one
How come there's so many feuds around Waurika? How come all the gunfights and everything?
Well, all of it was in the Indian Territory, and I'll tell you something. The ones that settled that part of the country, the majority of them were outlaws. I don't say they were outlaws, but I mean they come over there for a reason, to get out of the jurisdiction of some local law enforcement outfit, settling in the territory. Now, I don't mean that this family was feuding with those, but there was a heck of a lot of mean people that settled in there. Around Ardmore and all through there, you know, there was one of the old early characters around was named Bud Ballou, sheriff over in Carter County. And
Well, I think we have a good interview.
well, I hope it's been useful to you.
Yeah, a lot of good information, especially about your grandfather.
Yeah.
And also the history of Altus and Martha.
Huh?
Also the history of Altus and Martha.
The truth.
Mm-hmm.
As it is. Not as I think it is. I've been that way a long time, and I'm going to just be perfectly frank with you. Up until 2 years ago, I was a strong Democrat. Today, I'm just as opposite as I could be of that, because I've never seen anything that what the Democratic Party and the Democrat leaders, they've been underhanded. They've done things that anybody, I don't say that the other party hasn't.
Yeah.
But it just disgusted me with a hell of a lot of things it did. I just switched. And a lot of people think I'm silly. That's nothing unusual.
Well, that's your choice.
At least I'm honest about it.
Yeah, that's right.
This article here, I threw it in that. On that Nixon deal.
Yeah, what do you think about the Daily Oklahoma?
Well, I think they straddle the fence a hell of a lot. I think there's lots of times they take a very good stand on some of the issues, and sometimes I think they don't. I think that the Daily Oklahoman has had they write for what's good for the Daily Oklahoma and Oklahoma City, of course. Gaylord's been a very good promoter of Oklahoma City. He's had a hell of a lot to do with Oklahoma City's growth. But he's controversial. When he lived in Tulsa, those Tulsa papers, I think that writer, that owner of one of those Tulsa papers, what's his name? He writes a lot. He's on Reader's Digest list of editors. What's his name?
Oh, Troy?
Huh? No, you think of Troy, no. My memory on the name, like, I can't recall as quick as I want to. In like 30 minutes from now, I can tell you what it was. But anyhow, he's an editor and owner of one of those Tulsa papers. And I think his editorial is the best that I've ever read. He don't try to force his opinion on you. He just tells his way. He got it. Gosh, why can't I think his name? It's all right.
How long you been mayor of Martha?
Well, I moved here in February 1968, and Clyde Dowdy was he died and left the vacancy in the board, and a bunch of them come around and want to know if I wouldn't take it. Well, we had 2 members of the board that were just good old boys, but they didn't know one thing about business procedures or anything else. And I told them, I said, well, there's just one way I'd take it, and that they'd appoint me president of the board. So they did, and that's been that ever since. When I went in as president of the board, we didn't have a fire truck, we didn't have a truck, we didn't have a tractor, we didn't have a city hall, we didn't have a damn thing, except Dottie's grocery store over there had a file in there where he kept the papers of the town. The water department, we had one of the members of the board did the water meter reading, they collected the billing, and they collected and turned it into the money. We had about 100 customers. And the minimum then was $5 a month. And ordinarily, the town was getting around $150, $200 a month out of it. So when I read it over, why, I told this member of the board, I said, now you're strictly conflict of interest being on the board and doing the collecting and all. He had a little cafe over there, and he had a cigar box where he collected the water bills. Mm-hmm. Well, if they needed some change in the restaurant, well, they'd run over at the cigar box and make a change if they didn't have it in their cash register. You know, it's just honest but messed up.
Yeah.
So we got that. Well, we've got a fire truck, fire station. We've got a truck. We've got a tractor. We've got mowing machines. We've got a city hall. We got a water and sewer superintendent. We put in a sewer system. We put in a new water system. And volunteer fire department.
Mm-hmm. Sounds good.
That's all we've done.
Yeah. Is that since '68?
That's since 1968.
Yep.
I'm gonna try to find you that